So welcome everyone. A couple people have just joined in that short amount of time. Katie, hello. Hi, Randall. I think someone else joined. Oh, hi, Salome.
Salome, yeah. Hello.
Good to see you.
Hello, hello.
Hi. So this is the DigiURI Media Club, our April 2022 meeting. And today we're going to be talking about the algorithm audit, which is a little bit of a progression from some of our past conversations around algorithms. We've talked a lot in this space about the problems that algorithms can pose to society, et cetera. And so today what we're looking at is a potential step toward a solution to that. So Michael, do you want to say anything else before we get started?
No, let's take it away. I think that's fine. I'm gonna have many questions anyway, so that's gonna be looking forward to the answers. Here we go.
I have a lot of questions too, actually. All right, so because we know that a lot of people don't have time to read the article, and I'm actually curious if anyone saw that this was an academic article or an academic style article and was like, oh no, no. It was a really short one. When I first looked at it, I was like, oh no. But then
It sounds like a student. It sounds like students reading 10-page articles. Oh, that's too long.
To me, it was very easy to read compared with other academic articles. It was short and everything was like, okay, everything seems clear to me, and it was easy to read for me. Yeah.
That's good. I thought the same thing. It's not too super wonky. All right, but for those of us who didn't read it, I went ahead and prepared just a little overview of what the study goes through, and I put the link to the slides here in the chat. So feel free to access them and follow along if you'd like to. And I think, should I make this? Here we go. All right, so bear with me. I'm on a tiny screen today. All right, so the title that we're discussing is the algorithm audit. And I thought it was pretty interesting to take a look at the authors of this study. Why isn't this advancing? I'm just going to go back and do this way. Okay. So the authors of this study actually come from a surprising array of disciplines. The lead author is actually an astronomer who works a lot with data. So my suspicion is that this person maybe creates algorithms to help this complex data analysis be more efficient or faster. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't look like Dr. Brown does a whole lot else with ethics and algorithms. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And the other two are in philosophy, which I think is a better, or not better, but more logical fit, I think. So let's start by, or the authors start by talking about what is an algorithm audit. And so one of their critiques of traditional algorithm audits is that it's basically a way to look at the performance of an algorithm. And as we know from past conversations in Media Club, an algorithm is really just a formula to get from A to B or to produce an expected outcome, right? And so typically those are tested for function and not necessarily for any sort of like ethical or socio anything, anything to do with humans or, you know, outcomes on people. Which is also what we've seen in our discussions of text on algorithms is the problem that we would like to address. So they propose an ethical audit to kind of supplement, or, you know, I guess supplement, yeah, a more functional audit. And so their target audiences are regulators, people who are assessing the risk of algorithms, and then people, just general people, I think we would fall into this category, educators, people who just want or need to understand algorithms and their impact. And they have a whole list of things that they think are important to consider in this context. And I won't read them, but you have the list here. And also, the first slide in the notes links to the actual study itself. So if you want to, you can open that. But basically, they distill everything down to a few categories and metrics that that they would consider when they're testing algorithms. And these are those metrics. So they do describe, they give a description of each of these different metrics in the actual article. I think it's on pages 5 and 6, maybe 6 and 7. So you can take a look at those during the discussion if you would like to have more of an explanation of what those are. But they kind of go on to say like, okay, great, we have these categories of things that we should be looking at. How do we apply that now to stakeholder interest? So they introduced this relevancy matrix where you identify the population of relevance, I guess, and you determine how each of those categories might impact the stakeholder. And then based on that evaluation, they kind of display whether the risk is low, medium, or high. And they say in the article that this matrix can have any sort of measurement. It doesn't have to be low, medium, or high, but this is just their example. And they use the example, they kind of illustrate this concept by using a test scoring algorithm and just kind of explain how this might look in that context. So that's really it. It's a pretty short article. So I'd like to kind of just open it up to the group for any initial thoughts or questions you might have. I mean, I can't answer the questions, but what are you guys thinking?
I think it's interesting that at one point they're not talking only about the math of like an algorithm, but they're having like a way bigger actually definition of what an algorithm is. I think they're saying that then on page 4. And so they're also like looking at the input-output function, but also the larger socio-technical system that surrounds this function. So I think they're very well aware of actually like that an algorithm should not only from A to B or like this math function. And I like that actually, this context approach. So, but I see that Daniela, she has her hand up.
Yeah,
hello all, I'm in Brazil. It's really nice to be here with you. And I read the paper, it's really, really interesting. But I was wondering what should be done to prevent us for being targeted from this kind of algorithms. I mean, in a daily basis, how this kind of method or audit could be done. It's not something simple. So you know what I mean? I'm just thinking about, this is very interesting, but if you are doing research or you have time to analyze the algorithms and so on, but in our daily lives, it's not something that could be applied. So I would love to hear from you. How can we raise awareness about the power of algorithms? So if you have any ideas or if you have any tips or lesson plans, you could share. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. And Jeff, I see your hand up, but I'd like to give the opportunity for people to respond to Daniela's question. And actually, part of what we're doing in a few minutes is discussing educational, like brainstorming educational possibilities. So hopefully that will help get to your question too. But anyone want to respond quickly? Yeah, Pamela.
One of the very first part of Daniel's question, which I also thought of, which is, what happens with this type of audit? And my thought was that if a formal audit like this was developed, similar to communication audits or other things, there could be some sort of badging for algorithms that have gone through the process. And that would be, I think, something that would be interesting. And of course, at this point, it's voluntary, right? The government isn't going to enforce it. But if a company says, hey, we use an algorithm that's been through this kind of audit, or it goes through this kind of audit every few years, here's our badge from X consulting company. I think that might inspire some confidence in this.
That's an excellent point. So sort of like those fact-checking verification ticks kind of thing, like it's ethically approved.
I choose the ethically approved algorithms. I love it. I can see the badging now.
That's a cool idea. Anyone else want to respond to that before we go to Jeff? All right, Jeff.
So, not too long ago, I read the book Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment by Daniel Kahneman and a few other people, which I highly recommend that book. It was a very interesting book. And he actually talks about how much noise there is in when humans make judgment calls as opposed to algorithms, and how, I think probably many people have heard now that judges give more severe sentences in trials before lunch than they do after lunch. And, there's quite a extensive study of these kinds of effects everywhere, which are pervasive and very large. And so he makes an argument that algorithms could be a way of avoiding this. And of course, you want these algorithms to be transparent, and they are constantly improvable. So I think that one of the failures of the article is that they don't address this option, this alternative way of looking at it, which is if you're using any algorithm, it can be improved, and it could be transparent and avoid the noise that's in human judgments.
And Jeff, Danielle is asking, what is the name of the author of?
I'll post it in the chat.
Okay,
I'll put the book
perfect.
in there.
Thank you so much.
I recently read a legal brief on that exact same thing, and that in finding discrimination with an algorithm, it's pretty clear. With a person, the intent isn't necessarily there, like I said, before or after lunch. So in one way, there are positives to algorithms that eliminate human noise, but there are also many flaws, as this audit points out, in algorithm design as well. But at least it produces the same thing before and after lunch.
Great. I think this is a great segue into our first breakout room discussion. So let's continue with talking about our general thoughts and questions that we have about algorithm audits and the potential for this in breakout rooms. So let's do groups of 3 for this, and we'll take about 10 minutes. Bear with me here. All right, so we'll have 3 to 4 participants, and then the questions are on what slide is this? Slide 8. So let me just share that really quickly in case you're not looking at the slides. All right, so this is what we're talking about. The first question is, what are your general thoughts about this article? And then the second is, what questions do you still have? So again, we'll do this for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and share before going into our second discussion. All right, and here we go. All right, and Katie and Jocelyn. Okay, Jocelyn. Hi, Jocelyn. Let me know if you're having trouble accessing your room. Welcome back. All right. Is that everyone? I think that's everyone. Welcome back. I'm excited to hear what you all talked about. Who would like to share?
I'll go ahead. I'm Zan, and I have my puppies with me today. And and I had a great discussion with, oh, my head for names is really bad. Shout out.
Zan, it's Gina, and I didn't get your name either because I'm on my phone. So I was just cycling through. And Zan's amazing. She has a really cool idea. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, and Gina had really cool ideas too. But we started thinking about how to create a student-based workshop that where students could play with how to break an algorithm or tweak it. Because I read that some platforms allow their users to tweak the algorithms and some don't. And I'd like to, like, I know very much about this, not much. I read an article about it, so. Yeah, oh, you talked about that last time? And look at me, I'm behind the times. Okay. And then we wondered about games too, and algorithms. That's it.
Those are really
I haven't explored as much as I should, Dan, but in some of my random searches, I have seen some lesson planning for creating and playing with algorithms, but they looked a little complex. But I'm sure there must be, if there's not something out there, that would be an awesome thing to create a lesson plan. But I have seen there are some sites out there that talk about teaching algorithms and allow students to write a simple algorithm and tweak it. So that's something I'd like to explore more, but I just haven't had time.
Yeah, same here, same here. Yeah, well, if you find anything, do we have a repository of fun things to share with each other? I don't know.
Yeah, we should start a Google Drive folder on that one at least.
That's a really good idea. Usually I just send out the resources with each follow-up email, but I think we should have a running list of resources. Maybe I'll create space on our website to do that. That's a really good idea.
Thanks.
Oh, Kate, hi, I didn't see you earlier.
Hello.
Hi. Who else would like to share what they discussed?
I'd like to say something, and Ralph, please say what you want to complete. We were discussing the importance of ethics in science and in technology, or every time we are talking about artificial intelligence. So I really don't know if some of you could share something about the universities. I mean, where those kids that are learning how to develop, how to construct an algorithm. I mean, do you know if this kind of reflection or discussion about ethics is something that is part of their lives in university, or it should be promoted? I really don't know.
Daniela, I think from a U.S. perspective, we don't do a great job of that. We typically have a set of core general education courses that include, analytical reasoning and social science and other things. And ethics is one choice students can have as a part of that. Within disciplines, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. I think I talk about ethics within a lot of my communication classes. And from a prior discussion, I can't remember if it was last time or before that, there are people in computer science that are trying to have ethics classes for those who write code. But I don't know the quality or the pervasiveness of that. And so I think there's room for improvement for sure.
Just to sort of as a tangent to part of what we discussed, part of the problem is at what point, this is where the audit I think is kind of interesting, because at some point it sort of crosses back from something non-human to being human again, right? In terms of how the audit gets executed, which means you reintroduce all of the potential complications that were introduced in the process of constructing the algorithm to begin with. And so then you run into things like, if you think about teaching ethics in the context of people who are learning how to construct algorithms for private sector interests. Does that mean that you're able to enter into a whole critique of capitalism? Does that mean that you're able to talk about where the value system that are implied in any ethical judgment are grounded? Because that can also, as we all know from our experience, ethics is a great place to hide things like racism and sexism, because then it comes out inevitably later when you argue about the ethics of level playing fields and things like that. So, not to make it too messy, but it's messy.
Everything social is.
Yeah.
Natasha.
Yeah, in our group, we were talking a little bit about there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the students' approach to privacy, which is sometimes fixated on what's the government doing with my data, and far less concerned about what corporations are doing with people's data. And so that's one disconnect. I think another thing that we're struggling with is, at least I am struggling with, is that if you weren't taught about this stuff, which I wasn't because I'm too bloody old to be taught about this stuff when you're in school, then we're learning to try to teach it to our students themselves. And so there's a lot of challenges with that. So I think those are sort of just kind of two hurdles that we're facing ourselves. Like, I cobbled together a bit of coded bias, things that I've learned myself about, differential pricing on Amazon or things like that, to try to make it relevant to where they are. But I think that's part of the problem, like, is we could all, well, at least I could use some, really good professional development in this area, but not for computer scientists, right? Because that's not what I'm, the place I'm coming from. But like if anybody has any ideas about some good professional development around this topic, I'd love to know something about that. Thank you.
Me too. Whoa, wait, people are asking Melda to teach these things, so I think there's definitely a need.
But I wonder to what extent that is possible actually to have that professional development, because these algorithms, it's like, in a way, it's like a black box many times. We don't know this kind of code, and so they throw it us into society, and then we see it like 10 years later, we see like this unintended side effects. And so I'm really struggling. Sometimes I'm not even aware that there's an algorithm out there. So this term of algorithmic awareness. So I'm there, so okay, suddenly my phone gives me all these advertisements and there's an algorithm behind it. In medication or in medicine, in hospitals, we use algorithms and they improve many, many things in a very good way sometimes. So, but I'm not even aware of that either. So I'm not sure. And the audit really, like the text showed me that it's really like, not like 5 questions to answer and then check. Right now I understood the algorithm. It sounds really like they have like a narrative linked to the audit, like really like, so I think it really takes time. So I wonder how.
Oh no, they're going to get the programmers in a dark room and shine lights in their faces and ask them these questions.
I hope
they
so.
have to.
But that would be like for me, like and that's like also like what Jeff was saying about the transparency, right? So if there's not that transparency, in a way, like then we always say it's not transparent, so what's going on right there. So yeah, so I have many questions, as you can see. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the other challenging thing is we learned from Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff that we discussed a couple years ago, right? Like a lot of times algorithms kind of get away from the developers and they don't even know what's going on. So how do you understand or have a hold on it? Scott, did you want to say something?
I was actually going to just kind of echo what you just said. As far as if algorithms were transparent, could we understand them? And then echoing your point, yeah, because many people do it and because AI is dynamic and changes based on its data, then even, people who program it, it's not like the programmers are even malicious. They're just, trying to enhance their, do their job and enhance their corporate bottom line. But one of the things I've been focusing on, I'm doing my doctoral work and focusing on algorithmic awareness. And there are some lessons out there. There are some things out there where people get, what was I going to say? Mitch Resnick from Scratch fame. He talks about a little bit of programming, a little bit of programming can go a long way. If you can get kind of behind the scenes with even something simple like Scratch, right? Pasted a link to something in code.org, where you get a little bit of behind the scenes of how algorithms make choices and how they may be biased. It really goes a long way in helping educate students.
Oh, thanks. And thank you for sharing all of that in the chat. That's amazing. So let's move on to our second breakout. This conversation is so rich, and we can, oh yes, please, Pamela, do send articles and I will distribute accordingly. So I had initially created 2 different discussions for us, but I've added a third since this general discussion is becoming so rich and in-depth and varied. So, we're going to have 3 choices. And let me go ahead and open the rooms. You can put yourself in any of these rooms, or I'm happy to assign you if you aren't able to do that. But basically, we're going to either discuss, and Michael, I think, is going to be leading this discussion, basically an information literacy evaluation of the text itself, the quality of the information, et cetera. Then the second breakout room will be brainstorming ideas and how to bring this into the classroom, or what kind of education connections can we make using this text. And then I just created a third just for more general discussion. If you want to continue to discuss other resources or just continue with the same line of conversation, you're more than welcome to do that there. And I went ahead and made the, let me put this back in the chat again. The slide deck, you're all able to edit it now. So if you would like to take notes here in the document so that we can all access them later, feel free to create a new slide and do that, okay? All right, so we'll do this for about 15 minutes and then we'll come back and share, okay?
Coming back.
It's a good sign that they're all talking until the very last second.
That's nice to see, actually, what is.
Yeah, I love
It's
that.
true. Sometimes when people, sometimes they come back right away.
Yeah, like students, that's what students do.
Students, they always come back right away.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. We were just saying everyone must have been in great conversation, because unlike students who just come back right away, you guys took advantage of every second, which is awesome. All right, so we've got about 7 minutes, which is not nearly enough time to talk about topics that you probably didn't have enough time to fully explore anyway. But it sounds like no one chose to talk about the content analysis or the text analysis, so interesting. So let's hear from those of you who brainstormed classroom uses. What did you guys come up with? Maybe let's hear like the top 2 or 3 ideas.
There were a lot, and I think a number of people want to share links to things like, I mean, from Scott talking about this machine learning thing that demonstrates the ocean and fish, and then along comes an octopus and you haven't trained it right. I mean, which is a great one for K-12 because it's so easily understandable. And 2 other recommendations for reading and ways to integrate it into any curriculum, as well as our straight media literacy. And of course, we ended with education is the important part here. We really need to work, you know, to make people aware. As was it John or I don't remember who said it earlier, but maybe it was Scott who said, I'm not even aware sometimes when these algorithms are happening, and I want to change that. I want students to say, hey, I bet there's an algorithm here. We had so many good ideas, guys. Others?
I think I just want to add, I think something someone else touched on, which is really important, is trying to start from the students' concerns. Because it's easy for us to talk, you know, from our, you know, it's like with general media literacy, easy for us to, you know, share our perspectives and our biases, really. But maybe have it start with what are students' concerns around these, and then explore that way. I think that would be something to think of.
That's an excellent idea, and kind of answers one of the questions that I had about the article itself, is how do you decide what are the factors that you're looking for, like discrimination and stereotypes and et cetera. So that's I think that's really great. Anyone else want to share some of their ideas?
Just Samantha, related to what you just said, I mean, how do you decide what are the important factors for any stakeholder group? They didn't say anything about that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And we even pointed to this question about collision of rights and collision of interest, because for example, with bad content, even if it's illegal or it is harmful or some other category, you have to balance rights like protection of children or vulnerable groups, but at the same time, freedom of expression. And it's difficult to have a very neutral and very balanced perspective on ethics regarding this type of systems. So yeah, these are, to me, are still questions without answers.
Yeah, agreed. Anyone from the second group would you like to share what you guys discussed? More general discussions.
I'm a neophyte in this domain, and I thought it was interesting when Jeff brought out that for some proprietary algorithms, it may be necessary for them not to be totally transparent, or because they could be gamed. So that was a takeaway for me. And then he also suggested that algorithms are equivalent to recipes. So that really got me thinking about how do we know what we're looking at? Because only if you know how to cook do you know that if you put that much of that in, it's not going to rise. You know what I'm saying? So that brought up even more questions. So I found it really, really helpful just to open my view of this.
Yeah, thanks, April. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Any final thoughts anyone would like to share before we talk about what we're going to talk about next time? Surprise, it's more algorithm stuff.
I'm gonna cry, no more algorithms.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for this rich discussion and for sharing all of these great resources. So I'll do my best to collect all the resources that you shared and send it out in the email. And I think to Zan's point, it would be a really great idea to have a collected sort of toolbox or repository on our website where we can all contribute and just plop things on there. So I'm going to figure out the best way to do that and share that with you in the follow-up email. And next time we're going to be talking about sandbox technology. And I wonder if anyone, so we're going to be talking about sandbox testing environments. And I've been looking, Vasu Prada, who's going to be hosting our discussion, we've both been looking for really, really concise explainers about what sandbox and testing environments are. And I can't find anything that talks about that in a very short, succinct way. Does anyone have a suggestion?
Ryerson University in Canada, Sam, their library commons, whatever they're calling it, is massively into that. So that might be a link to follow.
Okay, Ryerson College, RYER.
Tasha, can you put that in the chat box? If you have that.
Oh my God.
And so along the same line of questioning, Vasu Prada is open to co-hosting this discussion, and there's so many experts in the room here. I wonder if anyone would be interested in collaborating with Vasu Prada on putting together our discussion for next time. And you can think about it, just shoot me an email and let me know, because I'm sure she would love to collaborate with someone. All right, well, with that, everyone, thank you again so much and have a great April. And you'll hear from me in email. Michael, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. So thanks a lot for the discussion. It was great. So
awesome.
Enjoy April, and then see you all in May, I guess. Hopefully, come back. Thanks so much. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.